class to Chapter 2, Variables and Simple Data Types of your Python Crash Course textbook. We're going to use a PowerPoint presentation to structure the lecture for Chapter 2. This video is going to cover the first portion, or the first half of Chapter 2, and we're going to look at hello world.py next. So what really happens when you run hello world.py? So reminder, all Python files must end in a .py file extension. And this, again, just to reiterate, indicates that it is a Python program, and it flags your editor, such as VS Code, that you're trying to run a Python file, which then will look for that Python extension, which will then look for Python that's installed on your system. It also indicates to your code editor that we can highlight with different colors, and this is called syntax highlighting. So you may have noticed that when we first typed hello world, that my comments based on my color scheme that I have selected are in green, and then I have like a light yellow for the Python command. And then my text, my string literal, which we'll talk about soon here, is kind of in like a salmon, kind of a peachish pink color. So again, depending on the color scheme, which you can modify through your file menu by coming to Preferences, and then to Theme, and then to Color Theme. So next, looking at variables. So variables are labels that hold a value. So in this case, we're creating a variable called message, and it's going to hold a string literal that's enclosed inside the quotation marks. We then change the print statement to print out the variable. And you can change a value of a variable at any time. So let's go ahead and modify hello world to have this variable. And then we'll print out the variable. Okay, we'll go ahead and run our file. Okay, and we get our same output. Okay, so how do we name and how do we use variables? Naming, we can contain only letters, numbers, and underscores. So no spaces are allowed. So again, letters, numbers, and if you want to separate our words, use underscores. It must start with either a letter or an underscore. Do not use Python keywords. So to this point, we have the Python keyword print. Okay, so you're not going to name a variable print. And they should be short and descriptive. And I like to use the word functional. So functional as in, if I look at the value that's assigned to that variable, okay, does it make sense to the name that I used for it? So if I'm going to name a variable var1 equal, there's really no meaning to it, okay? But if I name it name, then I know the value that is assigned to it should be assigned a name of some sort. Okay, note, recommended by the PEP8 group, and the PEP8 group is the group that sets the recommendations for Python, that we should be creating our variables in lowercase. So avoiding name errors when using variables. So let's go ahead and create this error, and we'll get a traceback error, and we'll talk a little bit more in detail about that. So if I forget to type 2 S's in message, and I run my file, okay, I get a traceback error, and it says name message is not defined. Well, it's not defined because I mistyped it. Okay, so I need to make sure that it has 2 S's in it, because on line 3 it has 2 S's here. And you can even see in the syntax here that this is being flagged as that there's something wrong here with the squiggly lines below it. Okay, so if we go ahead and we update it, okay, we will go ahead and have that notation taken away. So again, also it says line 4. So it's actually pointing to that particular line that is creating the error as well. So in this case, it's a name error, and there's multiple different ways that traceback errors can come back to us. So don't go into panic mode when you get in traceback error. Try to read through, okay? Take some patience with it. Look at what it says. If it says name error, okay, then you notice maybe it's not named correctly. And I don't like to say misspelled. I like to just say mistyped. Okay, so mistyped, we just forgot the S here. Okay, and you want to look at the file that it's working with here. It says in my chapter 2 folder, hello world.py line 4 is the issue that is at hand here. Okay, so traceback is a record of where the interpreter ran into trouble when trying to execute your code. Many programming errors are simple. They're usually one single character, and it's usually a typo. Okay, and so sometimes you just need to take that break and walk away for 15-20 minutes, and you come back and you'll see that error right away. Traceback errors can also be called syntax errors, and syntax errors are more pointing towards the Python language. So if I forget a quotation mark, that's going to be a syntax error. But if I mistype something like a name of a variable, that's what they're going to be called, is a traceback error. And we'll also talk about logic errors. Logic errors is my program runs, but logically the output's not coming back the way that it's supposed to, okay, or intended to. So traceback error, syntax error, kind of the same, but again, syntax is pointing more to the Python language and the syntax of the language itself. Traceback error could refer to a variable name, and logic runs, but the output is not exactly what it's intended to be. Okay, strings, a series of characters and anything inside single or double quotation marks. So you can choose to use double quotation marks, and that's the convention that I will use with regards to enclosing string literals. Okay, but you can also use single quotation marks. If you're going to enclose double quotation marks inside of your string, okay, you need to enclose it within the whole string within a single quotation marks. So when we start a string, what Python looks for is the close of it. Where does it close out? Okay, so if I have a single quotation mark right here, that's where Python's going to think that this one is ending. So again, if you're doing double quotation marks inside, okay, you want to enclose in single, and then vice versa on the second line here. Okay, if I have one single one inside of a double quotation mark system, then I'm okay. But if I were to have started this one with single, then I'm going to have an issue because Python's going to think that this is the end. Now, here is the workaround to all of this. And I'm going to use VS Code to demonstrate this. So if I want to use double quotation marks here and here, the way that I can work around it, and you can see that the editor is flagging this, is to put a backslash, and we call that escaping the character. So if I put a backslash in front of this one, we're saying that nope, this has got a special meaning right now. It's not to close out this quotation mark that started my string literal, it's to actually insert that. So if you want to learn more about escape characters in Python, go ahead and do a Google search of that. Okay, changing case in a string with methods. So we're going to be looking here at title, upper, and lowercase. So title case is going to capitalize each word. This is the first letter. Okay, and then upper and lower are going to correspond to their upper and lowercase values. So let's go ahead and look at name.py next. Okay, so here is my name.py. Now I did a little bit of different cases in the value of name just so that I can go ahead and demonstrate the upper and lower effectively as well. Okay, so we have title. So if we go ahead and run this file right now, okay, we get Ada Lovelace, okay, with the title case. I'm going to go ahead and copy this to show you and demonstrate upper and lower as well. So here is upper. Okay, should go to all uppercase, and here is lower. Okay, and I have my output, and it's correctly coming out as I logically thought it should. Okay, so the lower method is particularly useful for storing data. Okay, you typically won't want to trust the capitalization that your users provide, so you'll convert the data that you get from your users to lowercase using this lower method. And we'll look at that in an example, okay, for an assignment in Chapter 5 using that technique. Next, we're going to look at the F string. So when we're doing our output, it's absolutely required that we use F string. So I don't want to see any concatenation using the plus symbols in your Python assignment. So we're going to be using F string. So how do we go about doing that? So here we have a variable called first name, and then we have one last name and then one full name that is concatenating those two values together using an F string. Okay, so let's go ahead and take this and put it into practice in the example full name. Okay, so we have first name Ada, last name Lovelace, and again concatenate them with an F string. So when we code an F string, it works like this. Okay, so F and then a double quotation marks. Okay, and then whatever we want in between that. Okay, so in our case, it's first name and last name. When we're working with variables, we need to make sure that we enclose those variable names within the curly braces. So I'm going to go ahead and run this so that you can see the output. Okay, and you see Ada Lovelace down here in title case, both of those together, even though they're coming from two separate variables. Okay, if I forget to put the curly braces around, and code it as such and run it, I get first underscore name. Okay, that's the name of my variable, right? Okay, capital F and a capital N, because those are two separate words, and the same thing is happening to last name. So make sure that you use your curly braces around your variable name so that it grabs the value that's associated with the variable. Now I added a couple code comments over here. Okay, using an F string to concatenate variables, and then out here it says print out full name. Okay, so in your assignments, you're going to make sure that you always put at least 2 code comments in your files. Okay, this is just to practice really good documentation. Okay, and documentation is essential in the workforce. Okay, so that is our full name. Adding white space to strings with tabs and new lines. Okay, so we can add a tab, and tabs look really big in the command line. Okay, so if you're in the Python prompt, they'll look fairly large. If I want to do a new line, I would just do a /end, and that's just like Shift Enter if you're in Microsoft Word. So these are just 2 examples, and you can go ahead and practice these, okay, at the Python prompt, okay, in your textbook. We also look at stripping white space. Okay, Python can look for extra white space on the right and left sides of a string. So you may be thinking, well, why would I even be concerned about that? Well, when we get data from outside sources, a user may be typing in our application, they could accidentally hit the space bar. Maybe they don't intend to. Okay, and we can go ahead and use rstrip, lstrip, or strip. So R is going to be from the right side, L is going to be from the left side, and then strip is going to be back to both of those. So we're going to look at an example here in your book, and we're going to work with the terminal. Okay, we're going to work with the Python prompt. So we're going to create a variable, and I'm going to shortcut it to be just fav language. Okay, and we're going to assign it Python with a space at the end. Okay, and you can see I'm doing typos already. Okay, if I look at fav language by hitting the up arrow, okay, and just see what's stored in there, I see that it has the space at the end. Okay, so now I'm going to do fav language, and I'm going to say rstrip. Okay, so that should take that space away, correct? Okay, and it does, but if I look back at fave language as a variable, I see that the space is still there. Okay, so rstrip is not something that changes the value in the variable, okay, in a permanent way. So in order for us to do that, when I get to the rstrip, I need to reassign it back to the variable. So there's quite a few methods in Python where you'll need to do this practice. So if you wanted to update what the current value is to the new value, you'll always want to reassign it. So now if I look at fave language, I can see that it is been removed. Removing prefixes. So when working with strings, another common task is to remove a prefix. Okay, and this is just so that we get down to the raw URL. Okay, so here we have a URL with HTTPS. Okay, and that's stored in no starch underscore URL variable. And if we use the remove prefix method, okay, we tell it what prefix, okay, that we want to remove, and then we get the value back of just the raw URL. Avoiding syntax errors with strings, I kind of mentioned this already. Just make sure that if you're using some sort of a single quotation or double quotation mark that you're using the opposite, okay, or just simply use those backslashes and use the escape characters. So we're going to look at next our lab assignments that are for this section. So we'll first look at simple messages, okay? And simple messages, all I want you to do for 2-2, okay, is assign a message to a variable and then print it out and then change the value of the variable to a new message and print the new message. So if we come back and we look at our hello world, okay, it's much like this, okay? Just assign a new value to it and then again print it out. 2-6, okay, famous quote 2. So we're going to run through 2-5 in order to get to 2-6, okay? So we'll look at 2-5 next. Okay, so looking at 2-5, make sure you put your name and date at the top, okay? And I'm assigning name, okay, not name, I should say, let's just say message at this point. Okay, or maybe it's quote. Okay, we'll do quote. Okay, so if I want to print out this quote, I would just say print quote. Okay, that's what we've learned so far. Okay, so I gotta get my O in there, save it and run it. Okay, so Albert Einstein once said, a person who never made a mistake never tried anything new. So how could we change this up a little bit so that we have quotation marks around this? Well, we could add in the backslashes or the quotes. Okay, so if I do \quote and I go ahead and run the file, I now have quotation marks around my quote. Okay, so this is really 2-5, but 2-5 is not the one that is assigned. 2-6 is the one that is assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and resave this as 2-6. Okay, and let's look at the details of 2-6. So repeat exercise 2-5, but this time represent the famous person's name using a famous person. Okay, and then I'm going to add into this. Okay, I'm going to say that I want you to then put the quote in a variable as well. So if we just say famous underscore person, okay, and we can actually just cut him out of there. Okay, so there's our famous person. Okay, and then we're going to do just the quote in a variable. Okay, so the quote is there. Okay, but now I need to make my f string, bringing in my two variables. Okay, so your task is to create this f string to get your output for 2-6. So that wraps up this first part of Chapter 2. The next lecture video will cover the rest of Chapter 2. And if you have any questions or concerns with this section, please reach out. Thank you.